Okay, so inflation and capital budgeting. So the inflation is certainly a fact of life, and you have to consider it in capital budgeting. The Baldwin Company example actually captures an important fact of capital budgeting and inflation. The inflation rates for different types of items are different, and it depends. Simply depends on supply and demand. If the supply is short, inflation can be very, very high. If the supply is in excess, inflation can be even negative at times, or deflation. So, but it's important to consider. That's the most people look to the CPI, or Consumer Price Index, as a measure of inflation. It is a general measure, but it is certainly flawed. There are items in the economy that are certainly left out of that. So anyway, so we have to consider the relationship between interest rates, inflation, and inflation. This is referred to as the Fisher equation. It is simply 1 plus the nominal rate of interest is equal to 1 plus the real rate of interest, multiplied by 1 plus the inflation rate, or expected inflation rate in most cases. So if rates are low, we can use a generalization of this equation. So the real rate of interest again is the rate that ignores inflation. So the real rate of interest is the nominal rate minus the inflation rate. So the nominal rates certainly fluctuate greatly. They've been very, very low, pretty much ever since the financial crisis in 2008. So this approximation is probably very, very valid for the interest rates that we are facing right now, and inflation rates we're facing right now. So capital budgets, you have to compare either real cash flows and real rates, or nominal cash flows and nominal rates. So that's an important distinction. If we're going to compare uninflated values, we have to consider real rates of interest. If we get nominal cash flows or actual cash flows, we need to calculate rates using rates with inflation included. So now, chapter summary, quick quiz. How do we determine if cash flows are relevant to the capital budgeting decision? They're just whatever cash flows are determined by the project, or are required by the project. We have to consider the actual cash flows of the project. Remember, some costs don't matter, but we also have to consider things like erosion and synergies that go along with that, and when we're determining our cash flows for a project. So different methods for computing operating cash flows. The one thing to note here is that there are 3 different methods for calculating operating cash flows, but you should always get the same answer. The first is a top-down approach, second is a bottom-up approach, and the other is a tax shield approach. In most cases, you should be able to use any one of these approaches and get the exact same answer. So, what is equivalent annual cost? Equivalent annual cost is the annualized cost associated with a project. We saw it with regard to, I think it was air cleaning system. When you use it, you're going to use it when you have projects with different useful lives. So, finally, how should cash flows and discount rates be matched when inflation is present? So, if we're going to use real cash flows or deflated cash flows, so we want to use real rates of interest. If we're using nominal cash flows, then we want to use nominal rates of interest. It's as simple as that. All right, that is the end of chapter 6.